You know, just over a year ago, I did my first video on a Simgot product that was the Simgot EA500. And today, I get to talk to you guys about the EA500LM. And of course, I am going to talk about if this is truly an upgrade from the OG EA500 that I really enjoyed. Let's check it out. What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Simgot EA500LM. Now, this is a single dynamic driver IEM from Simgot Audio. It retails in at $89.99. And before I get further into this, I do want to send a big thank you out to Simgot Audio, who did send me the EA500LM in exchange for all of my thoughts and all of my opinions, which of course, guys, are always of my own. All right, so before we take a look at what you get inside the box of the EA500LM, you're probably wondering, what are some of the differences between this and the EA500? Well, honestly, it's in the name. The EA500LM stands for a liquid magnesium dome that is on the diaphragm of the driver that they have done differently from the OG EA500. Other than that, there are 3 tuning nozzles with this one and 2 tuning nozzles with the 500. But going back to that driver really quick, I can tell you that it is 16 ohms of impedance and 123 dB or 124 depending on the nozzle of sensitivity, whereas the OG EA500 was 21 ohms of impedance and 123 to 124 dB of sensitivity. So very similar there. This one's going to be just a smidge easier to drive with volume and things like that, but both of them are super efficient and honestly super easy to drive. All right, so then a quick A/B comparison of what you get inside the box. You're going to notice that both sets look very similar from the 500 and the 500LM, down to the fact that both even look identical from the shape of the earphones, the weight size. The only thing you're going to find different there is the 500LM will actually have an LM on one of the earphones, whereas the EA500 was just the Simgot logo on both of the earphones. Both of them are extremely difficult to video for B-roll, guys, because of the mirror-like finish on the shell. It is what it is, but that is probably one thing that if you're somebody that's into content creation will get frustrated by this product for that mirror-like finish, but I do like the aesthetic of it. Now, the comfort, honestly, I have no problem with that at all. It fits really well in my ears, seals very nicely with the included silicone tips that you get, and like I said, you are going to get 3 nozzles with this one, whereas you got 2 with the 500. The cable's the other thing that's a little different. It is a 2-way colorway cable. It's kind of silver and copper looking, whereas the EA500 was all silver. And honestly, guys, that's about it. The thing that you're going to be able to tell apart is the sound. So let's dive into that next. Actually, wait, hold on a second. Quick channel plug here. I am trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, join my Patreon, support me along the way. I would highly appreciate that. All right, now I'm going to approach this a little bit backwards from how I normally do, and I want to talk about the technicalities of the driver and compare that with the 500 because I don't want to constantly go back and forth between the LM and the 500. I would like to really focus on the LM for the remainder of this video after this. So for the technical differences, I can tell you that the LM, it is a faster response. It is a more precise response, and you just get a tiny bit more details out of the LM. Now, both of them, for the cost they're coming in at, I think sound excellent in my opinion. I am a fan of Simgot products, so take that for what that is, but I still think they both have a good technical performance from that standpoint. It's just, I think this one is just a little bit better. And you do get an extra tuning nozzle along with that as well. One easy way I can kind of describe that between the 500 to the LM is the 500's a little bit more rolled off on its sound, whereas this one's a little bit more of that kind of sharp edge on the sound. So like I said, bass response and punch and slam and things like that are just a little bit more precise. Those details in the trebles, those plucks, all of those are going to be just a little more finite and a little more defined, I would say, on the LM. But I do want to go forward now and talk about the tuning nozzles, and I want to talk about the new one they've included first. I say new one because the gold nozzle is not something that we saw on the EA500. The gold copper nozzle, we did see it on the EA1000. Not to say it's the same tuning, But let's talk about that first. And so the gold copper tuning nozzle is the most mellow of the three nozzles. And I'm actually really glad they included that with the EA500, because I could see that some people would listen to the 500 and the 500LM and think that upper mid-range and that treble can be a little bit too energetic at times and a little bit too harsh. And this tames that. This gives you good bass extension. I do think it has a better sub-bass response than it does mid-bass response. But then as you get into that lower mid-range, there's a little bit of boominess going on there, a little bit of a mid-range bloat, so to speak, in that lower mid-range. I noticed this on a lot of vocalists and things like that, that it just wasn't quite as crystal clear on their voices as some of the other tuning nozzles that you get with this IEM, but it mellowed it out. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with that mellowed out sound. And then as we go into the treble region, it does have some peakiness here and there. It's just not quite as peaky. I will tell you, if you pair this up with a DAC amp that accentuates that, or, you know, puts an exclamation point on the peakiness, this is going to show that up even further. For instance, I bought the Kiwi Ears Allegro just because what the hell, it was $59. And when I listened with this pairing, it was a little bit too peaky with that pairing. But when I listened on something like my RU7, that mellowed out sound was, you know, this is a really good sound in my opinion with the gold copper. And I think this is going to suit probably a wider range of audience. I know it is also tuned towards the Harman target, so it does kind of make sense from that standpoint when you listen to that nozzle. Now let's move on next and let's talk about the silver, steel, and black ring nozzle. All right, now something tells me I'm going to be the odd man out here when I tell you this, but this is my favorite nozzle that they include of the three. This has the most aggression of sound in my opinion. It is also tuned towards Simgot's 2023 target, which kind of tells you what Simgot's house sound is going towards. This has the most resolution, I would say, and most clarity, I would say, of vocalists, but that is going to lend to a little bit more of that peakiness in the treble. But it also gives you a better response into that extended sub bass. It's a little bit more of a rumble, and then that kind of tames off a little bit once again into that upper bass. And then the mids, there isn't that mid bloat that I talked about with the gold copper nozzle. That doesn't happen with this one, and it kind of opens up the pathway for those vocals and for those instruments that come through in that upper mid range to that treble region. You can get a little bit of a shout at times because of that as well, but I don't know. I just kind of like aggressiveness to my music at times, and I think that's why I preferred this. Now, if you're listening to something really aggressive, some hard metal or something, yeah, you may prefer the gold copper nozzle just so it's not too much in your ear, but classical music and things sounded beautiful on this. You know, a lot of my blues music, I loved those sounds as well. Gaming on this, I thought was a lot of fun with this nozzle, and, you know, like I said, it was just my favorite of the three, which brings me to my least favorite of the three, which was the steel or the silver steel Ed Red Rig nozzle. Let's talk about that one next. All right, so quite honestly, the reason why I don't care for this one as much is this one's a little bit more of a neutral sound that does have a little bit of a boom going into the mid bass, but it rolls off that extension a little bit more into the sub bass. Vocals and things are a little bit soft to me here. I don't get quite as much details as I want. There's still some of that stabby sibilance and things. I think that, you know, it's just the Simgot house sound, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a neutral sound, and I don't really care for a lot of neutral sounding things, and that is just my preference. But, you know, if that's something that you would like, then, you know, that ring gives you that option, or that tuning nozzle gives you that option to go for. But truly was just not something that excited me a lot between the other two. And if I were to rank them between all three, I would say definitely the silver steel and black ring would be my 1A, and the gold copper would be my 1B, because I honestly do like both of those. I just happen to like, you know, the silver and black ring one just a little bit more. All right, and so in finalizing my results around the EA500LM to the EA500, I still think the EA500 is an excellent IEM. If you own that one, be happy with it. But if you wanted to upgrade to this one, I do think there are some things that are definitely upgrades, such as the third tuning nozzle, which I actually tried the gold copper nozzle on the EA500. Did not care for that. It fit. It was just way too muddy and just wasn't a good tuning nozzle for that IEM, which makes sense. They didn't make it for that IEM. They made it for this one. Also, the liquid magnesium dome on the diaphragm definitely makes a difference on this one. It truly does. It gives you more responsiveness. It's a little bit faster in the transient response, gives you a little bit more clarity and detail. So I do think they've done a nice job of that. I think stage space imaging, all of that is pretty samey from this one to the EA500. But honestly, guys, I'm a big fan of Simgot products. I know not everybody out there is all the time, but I am. And I think the 500LM is a worthy successor to the EA500. I think they did a great job with that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please smash that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and join my Patreon. I am really trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. All right, guys, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.